I am Renee Jean Lemieux, and this is the Forward Movement Podcast, Season 4, Offer the Poets. And I am so thrilled to welcome the first poet of the season, Kara Dobias, to share and breathe and set the tone of that which we're moving towards and that which we're moving through. Kara, may we begin with a question. How has the act of forward movement transformed your life?
First, thank you for having me, Renee. It's a beautiful question to start. Forward movement. I think I have begun that process and really meditated on that process through my writing and meeting myself more deeply through that. Um, and yeah, I think I've been able to move forward by, in a way, looking back, seeing where I've been, um, alchemizing all of that, getting to a place of putting burdens, worries aside, and really looking towards the future with more hope than I think I've ever had. And that is the moment that you find me in right now. And I'm very excited to speak to that.
And how has the hope arrived in this moment for you? What are the stories or the experiences that have led to this moment?
I think the hope has come from all of the work that I've done to recognize my own power, autonomy over my life. At the start of the year, I was really meditating on the idea of being the creator of my life, really looking at how do I want to feel within my life, whether that is relationships, professionally, personally. Um, and so I think the hope has arrived through really recognizing that I have that power, and doing all that I can to really embody that.
And what are you doing now that's embodying it, the power?
I think continuing to write, for one, something that so writing a book is so interesting for me. Writing my poetry book was such an act of, I have all of these feelings and stories that I feel like I need to have live outside of me. And so I was so focused in that process of just completing the work and putting it out and moving forward through that process. And just recently, I recorded that work as an audiobook. And it was so interesting to me to be sat in the studio, to hear my voice so clearly through the headset, and to coexist with these poems that I had written like 2 years ago. But really, for the first time, recognize the power in what I had written, in those words. And maybe it was because I was able to hear myself reading it, arriving at a point beyond these difficult things that I was writing about, and being like, wow, you really did that and moved through that and found the lessons in all of that. And what a beautiful thing that was. So I think that process in particular kind of, I had that light bulb moment of like, oh my gosh, you haven't even realized how powerful you are if you let yourself just see it. Because I think the flip side was, when you're writing about something difficult or you're going through something difficult, sometimes you can almost feel like there's a weakness to admitting that. But I actually found like, oh no, actually being able to sit with that, go deep in that, find the lessons in that, that's incredibly powerful, and powerful to express that, bring that to light, share that with other people, in hopes that they may be able to recognize themselves in that and kind of find something of value.
Oh my goodness, yeah, tearing up when you share of the moment you were in the recording studio and you heard your own voice express that which had moved through years ago. And it leads me to play with and wonder how many souls may or may not be preventing themselves from having that experience of feeling the sensations that float through the body. Can you remember, Kara, what sensations your body was feeling when you were going through the process of recording?
Hmm. It was interesting to me to see what was still bringing up emotions in the moment, even though these were old feelings and stories that I was telling. Um, and I think that that pointed to what had been released and maybe what I was still holding on to and I didn't recognize. There's one poem towards the end of my book that talks about body image and being in relationships as a woman and just being a woman in the world and just a lot of those themes. And I had written on the top notes to myself in each poem of how I wanted to deliver it. And I wrote, take up space, and that it was a poem I was reading to all of the versions of myself that had taken on messages that were not mine, that were making me small. And that was one of the poems that by the end I was almost in tears, but in the best way of, oh my goodness, like there was still something there that needed to be released. And I felt that in reading it, and because I was alone in the studio and I had that space to fully give myself to the poem, it was like, oh wow, that's incredibly powerful for me, but hopefully the listener. So I would say, yeah, that sensation of like, okay, that was still living somewhere in me. Can I finally allow it to be released through my art, which is what I try to do with any piece that I'm working on.
And I wonder, do you feel that okay, I play with this on a personal level because I'm like, "Oh, honey girl, I don't know if we ever really release anything." Do you feel like it okay, with that last poem in the book okay, pinning first. All listeners, all those who are co-creating outside of Kara and I right now, Kara is a published author of a poetry book called Alive. Kara, would you like okay, dun, 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 dun.
Oh, it's blurry. Oh, it's zooming in. Well, I thought it was going to do that.
It
This
works
is
there.
my book, if you can kind of see it, called Alive.
Alive. And okay, so plugging that in, go check it out. We'll be able to connect you with Kara later in the notes as well too. And also to circle back, I feel like in that space where you are expressing that one of that last poem in your book, A Body Image, do you feel that that which you were holding on to truly did release out of you? Or do you feel like it's a layering, unfolding that returns time and time again, but just returns in a different texture or returns in a different light
Mm.
or something different?
Yeah, no, I love the wording of that question because I think it is that. I think that that was a release in the moment. I think it was a release specific to what I was writing, particularly in that poem. But I think that it's the metaphor that kind of came to mind is like if you're like cleaning a space, right? And you get it all clean, you're like, okay, I'm set, everything's good. And then inevitably things get messy again, right? Like I think it's kind of like that thing of, and I find that, in my life and in my writing is like, it's like you write the poem and you're like, okay, I did it, I released it, like I can let it go, I can move on. And there are just some themes that are just bigger like that, like body image or just like being a woman in the world, that it's like it continually, just because we're alive, ultimately I think that it does come back and I forget sometimes of like the messaging I moved through or that ground I thought that I had like finally covered. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's innately human. It's just having an experience in the world. But yeah, I think that for that particular poem, there are definitely certain parts of it where I'm like, okay, like I can speak to this stanza here where I was writing about this particular memory and be like, okay, that at least is released. That I feel like I'm not holding on to. Even if sometimes I might feel like I'm taking a step back with the way I'm looking at myself or believing something that's making me small, right? I think it's just this continual process, but there's the beauty in recognizing, well, okay, I've gotten this far, and I can say like, okay, a year, 2 years ago, maybe I wasn't as strong in this, but now I am, and I have a belief that I'll just continue to move forward and to become even stronger in my self assurance and confidence in the way that I look at myself.
And your simple beingness, like that, even in the act of beingness, these I love the analogy that you have and that you offer to the space of cleaning a room. I feel so good. It's complete. You turn around a few days, weeks, months later, you're like, what happened? And that is because that like notion of healing, I don't subscribe to the healing. Like I am whole, I am perfect as I am, and also there's a continuous unraveling that is able to happen. And I love that you had the experience of vocalizing and allowing every poem that lives within your cells to be shared out through your unique expression. And not only that, that you held the container for yourself in such an intimate way that every single poem in that audiobook, the listener is going to receive the textures and receive the emotion. And I love the pin that you did of writing a note on top or like a guidance of how you want to. I think that's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I also know, Kara, from what you were sharing earlier, is that you have a deep passion around authenticity. And 'tis the season, you know. I feel like I had just spoken on that recently of the importance of authenticity, and not even just in this time frame of 2016, but even in like the 1300s, the human being authentic, that's the most important offering one can provide. So I'm super curious to hear what your thoughts are and what you're seeing and what you're feeling in the realm of authenticity and the screen that is, and also like through the eyes that we're seeing without the screen.
Mm. Yeah, I think I was thinking about this of like, I feel like sometimes I'm a contradiction in the sense of, you know, I almost feel most comfortable being very open and vulnerable and true to myself. And when I'm in spaces in which I feel safe to do that, like this, or like in community with other women or my friends, that is when I feel most me. And yet there is this, I think, in the world of social media, we're always presenting this sort of like performed version of ourselves in a way through the screen. And there's always this line for me of like, well, how much do I share? And I think it's very easy to not want to be your fullest self for fear of what people are going to think or say, or just in the world of algorithms, right, and trends, it's so easy to just follow someone else's template. That's something I thought a lot about, of like, have we kind of been going in the direction of we're all just kind of performing the same version of ourselves. Hold on, now how do I describe this? Like, if we're all just for the algorithm following this model of video or talking points, it's like it's the same thing through all of us, but it's like, where's the individuality in that? And it's almost sometimes feels like true authenticity. I think people are more definitely moving more towards and responding, but that's not always the thing that the algorithm rewards, right? So that's a very interesting kind of thing to think about. But yeah, I think for me, the challenge, or I don't know if that's even the right word, but something I think about often is like, all of that aside, can I reach a place in myself where I know that like I can just show up as my full self because that's what personally feels right to me. How people respond, I mean, we never have full control over that, but allow myself that. And yeah, I think that that's a place that I kind of find myself in the whole overarching conversation of moving forward. Part of that journey is like, can I allow myself to be visible and seen for me? And yeah.
And I'm sure writing, through the process of writing, we're as poets, as artists, every single soul on this planet, I feel, is an artist and a poet. It's just whether or not they're listening and tapping in or diving in or like putting a pinky toe in or not. And in that process, there is an exploration of, oh my gosh, what am I writing? Is this me? Is this me? I don't know. And I'm curious, when you wrote, okay, so Alive came through from many different poems that you wrote over time and then gathered them. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Some of them were I had kind of pulled from a couple years before. A lot of them were written within the same, like over the course of like a year, essentially in time of my life. I wrote most of them towards the end of 2022, and a couple in 2023, gathered everything, published 2024. So it kind of, most of the book speaks to that time of my life. Some of the subject matter pulled from, other times in my life, but most of it was written within the same time frame. Yeah.
And then within that time frame, overall, when you read back, when you look back, when you feel back into that which you were, that version of who you were, do you resonate with threads of authenticity that still lives within you from that time? Or do you feel like there's been a massive transformation because we started this conversation of you feeling like there's so much hope here, and it leads me to wonder if there were points where you're like, where's the hope?
Hmm.
And was there authenticity within both?
Yeah, I mean, I think I allowed myself in that body of work to really dive into what I considered to be the mess, the messiness of my life at that time, which is something I think prior I had been a little more protective of and didn't want to show. But I think that that was kind of the jumping off point for the book was, I was feeling so insecure about feeling so lost, or like I had not I wasn't sticking to the plan I had for my life. Things were just more challenging than I had anticipated, and feeling alone in that, I kind of came to a point of like, okay, I'm writing about this for me, but maybe if I share this, someone else who's feeling this way can find value, and not criticize themselves for maybe not having this super polished image right now, or having it all figured out, because who really has it all figured out, and so yeah, I think the authenticity existed in that, from the get-go. And what was the second part of that question there?
Yeah, and so that authenticity, that is you in that time frame, and then the authentic expression of who you are now. Do you find like do you find there's an overlapping of the textures of authenticity?
Mm,
Because we're always evolving, as you say, you know?
yes, yes. And that was the thought I had the first time you read the question, or said the question, was that what I found, recording the poems now and revisiting the work now, a couple years removed from the version of me that wrote them, was that I found there was so much longing in the book for approval and understanding and love. And, at the time, I thought I was asking that of the people in my life. But really, I can see now on the other side, it was more I wanted all those things from myself, because at the end of the day, without giving that to myself, even if other people are offering it, I think that it can be very easy to like not fully be able to receive it. And I think that's another journey I've been on, is like, okay, can I be enough within myself? Can I really show up with self-love, and then, everything else is a bonus, because I think it can be easy to fall into the pattern of like feeling incomplete without that like external validation. And we all need healthy love and relationships in our life, but I think like all of that ultimately begins with you. And I think that that's something I've been able to bring perspective and hindsight to, and just being on the other side of all of it, that I would say is different. um and was the thought that I had throughout some of the poems I was reading, is like, it's okay, you can let it go and it's gonna be fine, like it's not the end of the world. And certain things at the time kind of did feel that way, an emotionally potent part of my life. So I would say that is the difference. I think the authenticity is the same. I think I was expressing myself then how I would now, but the difference is I'm not asking that, permission to exist as I am, or validation or over explaining of myself. I think that that was a big theme in the book, was like I always felt like I needed to have some easily understandable version of myself to present, when I was engaging with other people. And now I'm getting closer to feeling like if my life feels good to me, that's what counts. That's what matters. Even if from the outside people may not be able to pin me to one thing, one job, whatever it is. It's like ultimately, it's like, do I feel at peace within my life? And that's the thing that I'm really aiming towards, moving forward. And that's the hope that I spoke to, is like, okay, now my life is feeling like mine. Now it's starting to look more how I want it to.
Okay, so much relatability. Since we started talking, I have been on the verge of tears, and also and it's coming in waves, and I'm in awe. I'm like, wow, because this we could chalk it up to so many, yet I feel like the reason is relatability. And what a grounding essence that is, to know that even within the algorithms, even within the space of will I be seen? How can I reach farther? How can this expression that I've birthed be shed amongst many? That doesn't actually matter, does it? Because when you are your beingness, sharing with another through a space of presence and authenticity, the shift has already occurred. Just because we can't, and this is, it's again, like so relating to what you're saying, because I'm in it, like I'm in the depths of it, and we're recording on the full moon, is just like, what is even happening? But like in the depths, in the shadow, when we are being authentic to the self, I'm reminding myself that when I'm in a low, I'm still authentic. When I'm cycling and circling in my mind of which decision to make without finding external guidance, I go internal, but the internal is circling, I'm still authentic. When I'm speaking with others and feeling that life force that was gifted to me in form, I'm feeling authentic. So I'm seeing this thread, Kara, of what you're saying, of alive, and every poem that you birthed in this body of work is authenticity for you. And then within the same breath, here you are, same soul, different expression,
Mhm.
same authenticity. And I'm noticing that within humanity, or at least within like the worlds of spirituality or the worlds of humans in a certain cognitive awareness, we get into these cycles of got to do better, got to be more myself, don't want to copy X, Y, and Z. But are we forgetting that it's all contrast? It's all contrast. And I'm just, thank you. Because
Aw.
it's like a big pot, and the big pot of like all of us, of the self, is in the pot. And you're like, I don't understand. I thought it was tomato soup. Why is this like vegetable noodle soup? I didn't realize I had all these bits and pieces to myself. I thought I strained them. I thought all that was left was the broth. No, we're meant to not just be broth.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that that was the thing that I was really thinking about when I began my book and continue to. And it's so interesting when you're writing, for me, not even that book, but I find just when I'm writing in general or creating in general, it's like there's the part of you that's very conscious about it, and then there's the part of you where things just kind of come through, and then you only realize later, you're like, oh wow, all of these things really connected in this beautiful way. Or actually, I was speaking to something so much deeper that when I wrote it, I wasn't even conscious of, And I think like the reason it's called Alive was because one night I wrote the title poem, which at the time I didn't know was going to be the title poem. It was just like I was feeling misunderstood, and I reached for my journal, and this poem just came out. And every time I revisit that poem, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is kind of like a blueprint for myself of how I want to live my life. Like this was the answer that I was asking myself. And, the first line of that poem is, what makes you feel alive? Right. And I kind of realized it was like, for me, okay, it was being artistic and surrounding myself with beauty and all of the arts and really feeling into that. But also just the last line and kind of like the tagline of the book that came to be is, to be alive is so achingly, terribly beautiful, right? Like those contradictions of like, okay, I'm experiencing this whole range of human emotions of being really happy and in love to now heartbreak and this kind of struggle and not knowing and confusion. But can I find the beauty in all of that? Because that really means that I'm living this life fully and I'm putting myself out there and I'm experiencing those things. And I think that was like a saving grace for me, of like, okay, yes, bad things are still bad, but also like I think sometimes the growth that maybe that you experience from that can be the beautiful thing. So it's like, yeah, in the moment, like being heartbroken sucks, but it's like, oh my gosh, but like I didn't lose me in it. I actually found more of me. And this is kind of a tangent, but it's a belief I've come to have and wrote about like relationships. The people we love and we keep in our lives are always a mirror of different things that sometimes we need to kind of be able to identify within ourselves. And so yeah, just like be a contradiction. I think that that's so human. And I guess like just to quickly go back to what we were talking about with like social media and algorithms and pigeonholing into one thing, it's like I think that's so against being alive. Is like we are just, we're messy humans who are good one day, maybe not so good the next, like express ourselves in all these different ways. And I think I feel most myself or most seen in community with people who really have understood that for themselves and move through the world in that way. There's something that's like such a breath of fresh air about that in a world that I think increasingly wants to just be like, no, just be one thing. Though I do think more people are realizing like, oh, actually, no, like I can be multiple things. And I think the first place that I really found that was amongst like creatives and artists who play in all of the different realms of being.
So liberating, so
Yeah.
inspirational, and so we're both in Poems and Power, the poetry class, and we both went to Kansas City, which like what? um that was just such I feel like that was a portal that was opened and that like all the galactic holders came and like created something new, a new imprint for not only the poets but life itself. And truly, Kara, that experience or being in this poetry class, I've never, and I'm mindful when I say this because the ones that I love, I really love, and I receive love from them as well. But I've never felt so seen before. And feel very I feel like there's a thread between you and I when it comes to feeling seen and having that external validation and realizing like, oh no, it's it comes from within, and then anything that comes forward to us is just a reflection of what we already are. And with Kansas City, that was, I feel like, the first time where I was like, oh my gosh, like I already know all of this, but yes, this feels so good. And in it, well, I wonder what you're seeing and I wonder what you're feeling after being in poetry class and after the Kansas City experience. What's something that shifted or something that's like top of mind that isn't going away for you?
Um, I think, yeah, I mean, exactly to your point. So I've been in Poems and Power since 2023. So when Chelsea did her first event in LA, like you said, like for me, that was the first time where I was in this room of women of like, oh my God, like I think this is what love is. And again, not to negate the other beautiful relationships I have in my life, but it was the first time truly in my like adult life that I was like, oh wow, like they get me. Like this is like, oh, these are my people. And it was the most heart opening experience. And I went to the event last year and obviously then Kansas City. And I think Kansas City felt a little bit different because again, as we were speaking about before, it's like that integrating of like, okay, I know these things, but am I believing them? Am I practicing them? And I think after Kansas City, and I had written a poem about it that I put on my Instagram of like, there was a line that one of the other poets had shared in her poem that I did the after poem of like, I no longer believe I'm hard to love. And I think that was so cemented with this group of women in that event was like, I am just showing up and I am being the most Kara there is. And I'm receiving so much love and just admiration and just like unexpected, just, yeah, the beauty and just like feeling of being held by these women. And I am not needing to earn that in any way. I am just being, and I think like it's, I've tried to, after that event, really carry that forth in my life, and especially in those moments where I'm feeling like, I think I'm the type of person, and I've written about it too, to struggle with the fear of being too much, because that was a message I'd received in other relationships or experiences of mine of like, okay, like if I am just my full self and the deeply feeling poetic soul that I am, like, oh, is that too much? Do I need to tone it down? And truly, like, I think from the Kansas City experience, from being in Poems and Power, I finally think I'm getting to that point of being like, no, not for the right people, or not even that, but just like, oh, I can just, give myself permission to believe that like I am just lovable as I am, and I might not get that validation from everyone, but it's really not about that. And certainly there are people that you wouldn't want the validation from, right? Like we're not supposed to exist for everyone. I think that that's another takeaway and thing that I've learned from Poems and Power, being in the community with the women who are drawn to that community, and just through writing is like, okay, yeah, I don't have to be for everyone. Finally, I don't have to be for everyone. I can rewrite that people pleasing, and um, yeah, I think that's where I find myself with visibility and that whole topic overarchingly as well, is like, can I really just give myself permission to be, knowing, okay, maybe it's not going to be for everyone, but that's fine, and that's actually more than fine. And yeah.
That's what we're supposed to be doing, supposed to be using that term lightly. Like, what's the point of being in form if we're not simply being?
Yeah.
Right prior to this call, I'm house and cat sitting right now in like a really lovely space. I feel so grateful. And right before this call, there were three turkeys in the backyard. And there have been three turkeys in the backyard the past couple of days, and they're just like bopping along. One of the turkeys today just decided to like be puff. And like the tails are out, macho, macho, and like trying to get the other two turkeys away. Like, and then the other turkeys are standing ground. I'm just observing. I'm like, I think I want to take my phone out and like have this recorded. I'm like, no, Renee, simply be and like receive them in this dance they're doing. And grateful that that occurred. Didn't really think anything of it. And now the turkeys are coming back because there's just a simplicity of being. Why is there this essence of trying so hard even to belong to the self? My unofficial mentor, Keone Hanalei, he's from Hawaii, and he speaks so much around belonging, that the core wound of humanity is that they're just seeking to belong. That's why there's so much shape shifting. That's why there's so much mimicking. That's why the hype is something that people latch onto like a lifeboat, because they just want to belong. And you spoke of it so beautifully, of how the belonging is within. When you belong within, then you can enter any room and you already belong. Therefore, there's no seeking to get approval. If someone doesn't resonate with you, cool, bye. Or like, you go in that corner, I'll go in that corner, I'll go down the street, you stay here. But there is this texture, at least for me, I'm feeling like in the expression of authenticity, whether it's on Instagram land, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's out in the market or wherever I am, and I experience an emotional wave. So that's another caveat here, is that the authenticity that I express is like, you're going to get a different version of me. And I can go 0 to 100 real fast if I'm triggered. Like I work with the children and they know that if they do, like I'm on it, and then I come back and it's like love open. And the feedback is they trust me more and more because I simply am. And they're not going to be confused what they receive, because it's just going to be what it is. Renee being Renee. So when we stop trying to be someone, but within the same breath, I'm it doesn't feel good to cause harm. And I recently did something and I sent it out, and then my mind started to spiral because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, did I cause harm? I don't think I did. I hope I didn't. That wasn't the intention. There was so much love pouring in." But there is something that takes place, and I feel like it goes back to your analogy about cleaning the room. Later, the room's messy again. Uh-oh, we just cleaned it. Why is it messy again? Is when the individual soul is listening to the authenticity and the pulsations of do this, don't do this, listen to the whispers, go this way, put this down, lift this up, there must be a deep rooted faith in that, because if not, that's when the spiraling occurs of starting to overthink or question, or like, that was the authentic expression of me, but why am I now second guessing that because the fear of harming or fear of not belonging. And Kara, I'm so curious of what you're speaking on, of going to salon in Kansas City, having the experience that you did, and then weaving who you are back into the everyday life. What what do you feel like is the biggest anchor for any human who goes through an experience that's very isolated, and then returning back to their life and wanting to hold the sensation of who they are most authentically, of joy and peace in that? What do you feel like is one of the most grounding supports a soul can do?
Yeah, I mean, that I think just pointing to the last three poems, Empower in Person Experiences, I think that that's been my challenge. And I think a lot of the other women have spoken to it too. Of, okay, I just had this really heart opening experience with all of you, and it's so beautiful. Now I'm back in my regular life with people who didn't have that or may not have yet found that for themselves. How do I not lose that? And I guess this year maybe is the first that I feel like I've been able to hold on to it a little bit more. And maybe that just kind of speaks to coming into this more self assured version of myself, or this version of myself that is wanting to just give me more permission to just exist as I am. I mean, it's something that I kind of like posed in the poem that I wrote after the event of like, we're in that space together, and one of the women had said something about sharing a story with us that she felt like she couldn't put on, social media, because she's like, I know you guys get it. And that resonated with me of like, wow, like there is something to be said of being in a space with women that you, or just individuals that like you feel like you can really be authentically you. And why is it so radical, or it seems hard to like bring that outwards? And I think sometimes maybe it's a safety thing. You don't feel safe enough to be seen, and that certainly I felt that. But like what I was questioning and what I wrote was like, what if that wasn't such a crazy notion of like, what if we did just give ourselves permission to show up authentically and share from that place that we know is deeply and inherently us, knowing, okay, maybe it's not going to be received or understood by everyone, but like maybe that's the trade-off, or like maybe just allowing that to be okay. um and I think that's something that I've really tried to like carry forward, is like, okay, as I said prior, like I think I do feel most myself and comfortable when I am just being deeply, you know sharing from a heart opened authentic place, where I'm just being truthful about my experience or emotions, and not putting shame around that. And I think it's an inner permission that you have to grant yourself, and arrive at. Again, I think it's something I feel like I have and then I don't have, and I have to, look at, okay, why do I feel like this is too much? Like, why am I labeling this too much? Or what is the deeper fear here? Is it just being misunderstood? Can I allow myself to be misunderstood? Am I just imagining that I'm going to be misunderstood and actually it's going to be fine? Like, I often find that too, of like, I do think that we collectively are searching for and craving connection, and I found as a practice for myself, I've used like my private Instagram stories as a space where I pop on and I'm like, this is a thought I had today, and just share because it's a community or a space that I've cultivated. These are my friends that I know are, I feel safe with, that get me. And there have been a couple times where like I've almost not recorded a video or, wasn't sure. And then I put it on my private story. And then I would have several people messaging me and be like, thank you for sharing that. I really needed to hear that. Or like this, like, woke something up in me or inspired me in somehow. And then I'm always reminded, I'm like, see, you're so afraid of backlash or like you said, harm. I think that's something I've been really cognizant of like, I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to like say something from a genuine place and have it misinterpreted. But the flip side is like, okay, but like when you do show up and you do share, look at the value that is, that you create for these individuals who, yeah, maybe needed to hear this from your point of view. So yeah, long-winded, but yeah, essentially, like I think it's that just inner inner permission, inner trust, coming at however you're sharing or expressing with the best intention, knowing that okay, maybe there is always at least a small chance that it could be misreceived and that not be your intention or just not understood. But that be okay as well, just because we're not meant to exist for everyone.
When you envision yourself as a 83-year-old woman, what do you envision?
Mm. um I envision just a woman who is so, self-assured, has lived a lot of life, is um, a little quirky, just, like, um, hopefully someone who can share my experiences and what's been helpful for those younger, or just like be a voice that can be like, confirmation of um, what it's like to create and choose a life that's inherently yours. Hopefully, a woman who has moved through her own fears and self doubts, but ultimately chose herself so fiercely in the end.
Mhm. I just pray that all souls find what they find and listen to what they listen to very intentionally. And thank you for sharing what you just shared of the 83-year-old version of yourself, because of course, like that's already taking place and you're just like, this is what's happening. I'm not there yet, but yeah, and how, I've had a couple questions move through my heart space, and if you're open to sharing, I would love to receive you in that of what is there a certain experience in your life that you are available to expanding with details on that was really hard for you? And whether it was embedded within your poetry book Alive, or something recently, or something, just anything that has texture of the depths.
Mm. Yeah, I think I'll speak to the poem that I mentioned earlier, which is the last poem in my book. It's titled "My Body Belongs to Nobody," and I think it was one of the most important poems that I wrote because I think every single woman who has read it has found something within it that they deeply resonated with, and I think that speaks to how, though we're all having our own individual experiences, there is a collective experience of being a woman in the world. So, as I kind of alluded to, that poem is me reflecting on having had an eating disorder at 11 years old. um, that it was a lot to carry at such a young age and to move through, and definitely gave me experiences that my friends were not having at that age. Um, I was just reflecting on the, it's interesting, well, not interesting, but I find it sad how much people feel comfortable commenting on women's bodies out of turn, and reflecting on the messaging that I was receiving at that time of my life, 11 years old, you know, changing body, um, that I needed to be smaller and going to the extreme of that. And what that did, just mentally in the way that I looked at myself, and even to present day, having had people around me always commenting on my weight, and how interesting. And, you know, it's always all of the commentary of that being be smaller. And so in that poem, I kind of reflect on that of like, I feel like that's a message that we kind of receive a lot as women, is to be less, to be smaller, whether that is physically or just in our presence or our words. Um, and that was one of the things I was talking back to, and why when I was recording it in the studio, I'm getting chills. Like I had written on the like the top of the page, like take up space, and was embodying that, and moved like close to tears by the end. Um, the other thing in that is not just even on the physical, or not on the topic of the body, it being commenting on physically, but then also how women are hypersexualized, and sort of like the dichotomy of that, of like going from being young, have my body already being this topic of conversation in this negative light, to growing up, you know, and then getting this unwanted kind of attention and sexualization from men, and really holding both of those things, feeling how both of those kind of experiences had informed how I was viewing myself, and finding a way beyond them. And the poem kind of is me moving through that process in real time, um, and finding my power again, standing firm in that, um, having gratitude for my body and all that it got me through physically, um, and yeah, and taking back that narrative around my body, and that ownership of my body, and really standing firm in that, and that being a message that I would hope for any woman, is that they are so strong in their autonomy, and no matter how the outside, you know, noise essentially, um, yeah, I have a line in that poem that was, you know, it's really interesting when you have other people read your writing and the lines that they pull out. And the one line that many women who have read that poem have pulled out and recited back to me is, "Forget wedding vows. In sickness and in health is my pledge to myself. Nobody loves me like my body."
Mhm.
And that was the line that like almost brought me to tears. Is yeah, just, and again, I think it goes back to the conversation of personal power, and finding yourself amidst your experiences or outside commentary. Um, and yeah, that was, you know, again, one of those poems that there were these messages or ideas about myself that I had been carrying for a very, very long time. And I think when I decided to write the poem, it was difficult to kind of dig into that, but I also knew I was doing it for the purpose of alchemy, um, and turning all of those messages on their head, and challenging them. Um, and yeah, by the end, feeling like I reclaimed part of myself in that way, and that I was no longer letting myself be defined by any of that messaging. Um, and yeah, so that's one of my favorite poems in the book.
Mm. And that you're defined just by yourself in any given moment of time. Yeah. Wow. And to be a human is a soul who chose a body, and whether one is able bodied or has aspects of their physical form that may not be as mobile as others, isn't there still so much strength in every single one? Because the strength comes from the soul and the heart and the discovery of connection. And even you vocalizing in the share, and thank you for doing so as well, is your body holds that memory. So in the 83 version of 83-year-old you, of course that is you, because you've moved through 83 years of life where the waters of your cells have the memory of how to move forward. Like at a certain point, I just wonder if it's not so much the mind or the tools in which we cultivate, and if it's more just having full trust that the waters of the body remember how to move forward. We just have to stop getting in the way of that.
Yes.
I wonder if there's any lingering thought, feeling, expression that you have that you'd like to share.
Hmm. I guess, as I hope this for myself, I would hope for anyone who tunes into this conversation, finds this conversation, is that you too allow yourself to fully be and name that to be enough for yourself, and that you find the community and people who are going to celebrate that, um, and be that little extra reminder that you're on the right path. Um, but also, more than that, that you're able to really find that self love and know in the moments it may dwindle that that is okay and you haven't lost it and it's still alive and well. And it's something that you can continue to return to and act from, because I truly think it is the most beautiful experience when you are able to, interact with people who are just so in their full authentic expression. And it is a gift, and it's something I'm telling myself too. It is a gift to give that version of yourself to the world, because it makes it so much easier for those around you to feel like they can do the same. And I think there's just so much beauty and healing in that. And I don't think that that should be a radical idea. I think that that should just be like more of the norm, if you will. To, I don't know if I want to use norm, but just that, like, I think what we've been able to touch upon and experience in Poems and Power is so beautiful and sacred. And I think I feel so blessed to have that community and have had those experiences, that I hope to create, spaces or experiences of me that allow people to tap into that, and that, others can find their equivalent of that for themselves. So,
And you don't even have to hope because you actively already did that. Yeah, it's already here. You already birthed that through your beingness and then through Alive. And yes, everyone go receive Kara's poetry book, Alive. You can find her on YouTube as well with vocal expressions of poetry, and Instagram. Everything will be down below. And it has been such an honor to be here with you today and swim in the waters of all that is you and all that is currently here to be shared. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
thank you.